Mangalam Shri Mahapani Swaha. Om Tare Tu Re. Mangalam Shri Mahapani Swaha. Om Tare Tu Re. Mangalam Shri Mahapani Swaha. Om Tare Tu Re. Mangalam Shri Mahapani Swaha.
Welcome everyone to Lama Life with Lama Tsultrim Allione on behalf of Mandala International Buddhist Community. At Mandala, we are committed to being a welcoming and open and safe community for practitioners and students of all cultures, races, religions, genders, sexual orientations, age, ability, and circumstances. My name is Dreamy, and I'm joining from the suburbs of Warsaw, Poland. It's a deep honor for me to support Lama Tsultrim and the Taramandala Sangha, both here in this live stream and within our virtual home, the Taramandala Network, a safe space for sharing and practice. This is our final gathering before Lama Tsultrim sets off on her Europe tour. So let's recognize the incredible blessing it is to gather here today, connected with Lama Tsultrim and one another across distances. If it feels right, and I already see that it feels right, and we'd love for you to drop a hello in the chat and share where you're tuning in from. And if you are going to participate in one or more of the upcoming in-person programs with Lamala, please share where. Today's live stream is particularly special as Lama Tsultrim has chosen to dedicate it to Green Tara, the fully enlightened female Buddha. Lama will offer an introduction to the teachings and offer the oral transmission for Green Tara practice, one of the core practices at Taramandala. For those of you encountering Green Tara for the first time today, I celebrate this moment with you as this practice is very dear to my own heart. Now, with deep joy and gratitude, I hand it over to Lama Tsultrim. Thank you for being here, and may we all benefit deeply from this precious time together. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Greetings from California. I'm in Encinitas, California, and I've been looking at all the places you are from. It's so beautiful to have this international community in the etheric realm. So let's take a moment and generate bodhicitta, the intention to be together today for the benefit of all beings. The sensation of raising bodhicitta really generates in the subtle body, in the heart chakra. And so tune into that energy in your heart, that energy of love and compassion, and then increase it, spread it, offer it to all beings with the intention that the time we have together benefits all of them. It's a vast intention. Thank you. So I'll tell you what my plan is for today. My plan is to introduce Green Tara, talk a little bit about her story and Tara in general. And then I'll give the Lung for the practice, which is the hearing transmission. And then I'll open the chat up for questions. So you might think of them along the way as I'm speaking. You could write them down and then put them in when I ask for questions at the end. Before I begin, I wanted to say that the reason I'm not continuing with Lama Live right now is that I'm leaving actually tomorrow morning for Europe. And I will be in Europe until the beginning of November. And so Dream May will post a schedule. I see there are people from Europe here. So anyway, I'll tell you where I'll be, and then Dream May will post the registration links in case you're interested in meeting up in person, which of course is very different than online. So I'll be going first to Prague in the Czech Republic, and then I'll go to Munich and do a day long on feeding your demons, and then to Sweden, where I'll do a weekend on non-duality, the practice of effortless presence based in the Dzogchen teachings. So that's weekend near Stockholm. I'm excited to go to Sweden because I've never been there. And after Sweden, then Switzerland. That's the longest retreat I'll do. It's 4 days, and it's in a beautiful retreat center in the Alps. And there I'll be teaching on the Semde lineage from the Dzogchen tradition. The 21 teachers who taught that lineage before it went to Tibet, 6 of whom are women. And they each gave these little pith instructions about sort of, okay, this is the essence of my teachings. And then they pass it down to the next one after them historically. And so I'm going to teach on those little pith instructions in Switzerland. And then the final retreat will be in Italy, in a really beautiful hotel. I just saw a picture of it yesterday. It's kind of up on a hill, and it has a sweeping view down to the ocean near Ancona in the Marche part of Italy. So that's my journey. And I'm really excited. I always love to go to Europe. I love the European students and also the place and the food, of course. And I also wanted you to be aware of the fact that my son, Toko Ursula, is already in Europe right now. He just finished his first retreat at Kamalashila, which is in Germany. He has another retreat there, and then he's going to France and to Poland as well, and Italy, of course. And he's teaching a lot of Usulningtik, which is the lineage from the Terma cycle of Adzum Pelo Rinpoche, with which we both have a very deep and abiding connection. In Poland, he's teaching at a place called Little Tibet in Poland, which is an extraordinarily beautiful place outside of Warsaw. So it's in the country. It'll be a really beautiful place to go. And of course, he'll teach in English. So if you're English speaking, you could go to that retreat and perfectly well understand the whole retreat, which is also true of all my retreats. Of course, I'm speaking in English. Even in Italy, where I speak Italian, I'll teach in English. So English speakers can go to any of these retreats and understand what's happening. And I see Dreama is posting all these links. So, yeah, I just wanted you to be aware of that. I'm about to hop over the ocean, and Tuba Ursul's already there. So, yeah. Okay, well, let's get started with Tara. Yeah, Tara, her Tibetan name is Drolma, which literally means liberating women, or the feminine ma, and then Drol is liberate. So she's the first women's liber. Do you remember that term? A woman's liber? In a way, she actually is, because of her story. I find it really fascinating, and I wanted to tell that story and also talk about it in terms of history and sociological situation that this story arose within. So the story is that she was called Princess Yeshidawa, or Wisdom Moon. And this is, they say it's sort of like in time before time. So we don't know when this was, but she was a princess, actual human being. And she was extremely spiritual. She studied with monks. She meditated. She was progressing very quickly along the path. And then her teacher said to her, "Oh, Yeshidawa, it's so wonderful how fast you're progressing on your path, and you're really getting close to full and complete enlightenment. But of course, you can't be enlightened as a woman. You have to have a male body in order to get full and complete enlightenment." And then she said, I'll read this quote, "In this life, there is no distinction as male and female, neither that of self-identity, a person, or any perception. And therefore, attachment to ideas of male and female is quite worthless. The weak-minded are always deluded by this." Okay, so there she's saying gender's irrelevant. Anybody who knows anything about the Dharma knows that gender is an illusion. It's a sort of concept that we attach to people, and that from the Mahayana point of view, we're empty of self, and therefore we're empty of gender. And so she's making that clear, absolute statement that it's irrelevant. Gender's irrelevant. But, this monk has just told her it's relevant, and you can't achieve enlightenment in a female body. And so she says, then the next thing she says is a vow. And she says, "There are many who wish to gain enlightenment in a man's body, and there are few beings who wish to work for the benefit of beings in a female form. Therefore, may I, in a female body, work for the welfare of beings until samsara has been emptied." So she's vowing with the understanding of the absolute truth of the irrelevance of gender, as well as the relative truth of inequality. So that, for me, was a really guiding principle when I began to be interested in women in Buddhism and noticed there's a problem. There's inequality. When you see all they just had this big meeting in Delhi of the future of Buddhism, and there were no women on the stage. So if gender is irrelevant, why is that? So anyway, it's a beautiful example of holding absolute and relative truth. And I think we all need to do this in the sense that at the absolute level, of course, we know everything's empty. There is no gender. There is no political situation. That it's all empty, and any concepts that we attach to it are illusory from the absolute point of view. But then from the relative point of view, there is inequality, or there is a candidate, one is better than the other for the benefit of beings, etc. So people often think that we should only think in the relative, in the absolute point of view. And if we're a Dharma teacher or a Dharma practitioner, we should only hold the absolute view. But that's not true. We have to hold the absolute and the relative truth. Otherwise, we wouldn't stop at traffic lights because at the absolute level, it's all empty. There are no lights. But at the relative level, if we don't honor relative truth, we would cause a major accident and possibly die ourselves. So, yeah, the story then goes that shortly afterwards, she did reach full and complete enlightenment in the body of a woman. And she vowed to always come back in the body of a woman. And so when I started writing Women of Wisdom back in the Middle Ages, in the 1980s, some people would say, this is dualistic. Why are you focusing on women? It's dualistic. I heard that quite a lot. And then I thought of this. I thought of what Tara said, and it was really a support for me to hold those things. So she took that vow, and then she entered into the Sambhogakaya. The Sambhogakaya is the dimension of luminosity. It's like a higher vibratory field than the dense field that we are in on the earth with our body of elements, etc., and our world of the elements. The Sambhogakaya is like a vibrational field that still has beings in it, but the elements, as we know them, are not present in the Sambhogakaya. It's a dimension of luminosity. And this is where all the deities of the Tibetan pantheon dwell. It could be corresponding to something like the angelic dimension in the Christian tradition, but it is a dimension of enlightened beings. It's not like the Greek gods where they're fighting with each other, and the Sambhogakaya is not like a pagan gods. It's a dimension of enlightened beings. And those beings have all made the commitment to benefit beings. That's all they're doing in the Sambhogakaya. And I think that this is where Christ is as well. He's in the Sambhogakaya. And when a being is in the Sambhogakaya, they can be invoked and called upon. And then if the practitioner opens to that field of that being in the Sambhogakaya, then they come into them or near them and they become active. But it's a two-way street. You can't have them helping unless you open that field for them to come in. And so our deity yoga practice is that it is becoming them, visualizing ourselves as them, acting as if we are an enlightened being. That's why Vajrayana is called the fruitional vehicle, because you act like you already are enlightened. You're in the fruit, whereas the bodhisattva path and the other paths before the bodhisattva path, the path of renunciation and so on, those are called causal vehicles, where you're creating the causes for enlightenment. But Vajrayana is called the fruitional vehicle because you act as if you are. And of course, you're not actually at a relative level, but at an absolute level, you are Tara, or you are Vajrapani, or you are Chenrezig at the absolute level. And so you visualize yourself as that, and then gradually you transform your dimension into that dimension of luminosity. That's the process of the deity yogas. And the mantras that you use are like the sound frequency of those beings. And knowing the symbolic objects that they hold, or their posture, or their color, understanding all that symbolic meaning is part of the process of transforming yourself into that dimension. And so once you are Tara, for example, in the Tara practice, then you benefit beings. You send out the energy from the mantras to all beings. So the mantra and the transmission are like getting the phone number of the deity, in this case, Tara. So it's very powerful and very transformative. And some people say, oh, I'm not into that. I'm just into formless practice like Dzogchen or just Vipassana. I'm not into all those complicated things in the Tibetan tradition. That's what, often people say that about the Tibetan tradition. Oh, it's so complicated. But it's complicated because you're putting together these relative sequences and these skillful means on the relative plane to enter the absolute plane. And so I remember once with Adzim Rinpoche, he was explaining something very complicated, and Vajrayana can get extremely complicated and very detailed. And so he was explaining something very complicated, and somebody started complaining and saying, Dzogchen is so simple. Can't we just do that? And so he said something really interesting. He said, when I came here, I came on an airplane. Making an airplane is very complicated, and you have to have all the steps correctly, or the airplane doesn't fly. But if you put all those complexities together correctly, you can fly. And so that's always for me been a really good explanation of how Vajrayana works. So Tara took that vow, and she's not in a dimension that we can normally find or see, but we read her description, and then we follow the directions and become her. We use various mudras or hand movements to make offerings to ourselves as Tara, and so on. And we bring in the energy of the Jnana Sattvas. So in Vajrayana, there's two main elements, the Samaya Sattva and the Jnana Sattva, the Damsikpa and the Yeshepa. And so the Samaya Sattva is the visualization that we create. We read it in the book. It's like, oh, she's green. She's got the right, extended and then stepping down posture. The left is tucked in, etc. So that's what we create, is the Samaya Sattva. Jnana Sattva is the wisdom beings. So these wisdom beings are those in the Sambhogakaya, who I spoke about, that are not in this gross dimension, although they can manifest in this dimension. For example, His Holiness the Dalai Lama is a manifestation of Avalokiteshvara in this dimension. But in general, the Jnana Sattvas are not in our dimension. They're in the Sambhogakaya. And so we invoke the Sambhogakaya, particularly Tara, if we're doing Tara practice, to come into and join with. And there's a mudra where you have your bottom hand turned up and top over it, that symbolizes the joining of Jnana Sattva and Samaya Sattva. And so that's an important part of the practice, and very powerful. Like, it's like water into water when that happens, and you can kind of feel it, like zzz, kind of like zzz, like it's there, it's come in. So that's part of the practice as well. So there's another story about Tara, which is that when the Buddha was about to get enlightened, as you probably know, the Buddha was challenged by Mara throughout the process of his enlightenment, and actually afterwards and before as well. So the stories about Mara from the moment where the Buddha decided to leave home and go on his search for enlightenment, he, from that time on, had this relationship with Mara, because at the time when he left home, his wife was asleep, his child was next to her, and he looked back at the palace when he was on top of the hill, and he saw the lights burning and realized what he was leaving. And Mara appeared to him and said, if you go back, you will become a universal monarch. And so just go back, you can still go back. And then the Buddha said, Mara, I know you. And he turned and he continued on his path. So that's a really interesting statement, Mara, I know you. Because if we don't recognize our shadow, and of course this is true of feeding our demons as well, then it can take us over. But if we recognize, okay, you're Mara saying this, then Mara loses his power. In any case, the light, in the life of the Buddha, that night of his enlightenment, when he was about to reach enlightenment, Mara was attacking him. And Mara is our illusory shots, our illusory thoughts, and our demons, so to speak, on our path. So Mara is whatever's blocking us from enlightenment. And so he was in this very difficult moment. And then the story is that Tara appeared and laughed the 8 laughs, 8 different kinds of laughing. Like, ha ha, ho ho, he. I don't know exactly what it would be. But Mara appeared, and that scared away. Tara appeared, and then that scared away Mara. So that's interesting that Tara appeared actually on the night of the Buddha's enlightenment. So the feminine was present in the life of the Buddha, and in the night of his enlightenment, the feminine was really present. And I find this very interesting, because we don't think about the Buddha as having a relationship with the feminine particularly. Of course, Sujata gave him the milk rice, and we know that he was married, but generally we think of the Buddha as kind of a lone Corone with his monks, and then women were sort of begrudgingly allowed in. But anyway, there's Tara, the night of his enlightenment, and remember when he arrives at the Bodhi tree and he sits down, Mara appears and says, "This is my seat, it's not your seat." And the Buddha said, "No, it's my seat by the right of all my past lives as a bodhisattva." And then Mara thinking, "Oh, I got you here. Who's your witness for all those past lives as a bodhisattva. They give you the right to sit here tonight thinking there's nobody here. We're alone on this beautiful full moon light. It's just me and Siddhartha here who's trying to get enlightened, and I'm going to do what I can to stop him. And then he says, the earth is my witness. And he leans forward and he touches the earth. And then in some of the old art, early Buddhist art, you see a goddess coming up from the earth and touching his fingers as he leans forward. So it's said that the goddess of the earth, Praviti, caused the earth to tremble at that moment. And Mara slunk away into the darkness, and the Buddha was enlightened that night. But then again, Tara came later in the night and helped to cause Mara to go away. So anyway, Mara and the Buddha had quite a relationship also after his enlightenment. There's stories about Mara. So it's an interesting thing for any of us who have studied psychology and the shadow, because Mara is really like the Buddha's shadow. Of course, there's no external being called Mara who's showing up with his daughters trying to seduce the Buddha, etc. It's all within the Buddha's mind, but that there is this shadow figure at play in the life of the Buddha is actually really interesting. So in these times, I feel an urgent need for the reemergence of the feminine, not only in women, but also in men and in our world. And so it won't happen, this reemergence and the rebalancing of our out of balance world won't happen until men also own this as an issue and become active in changing it. So to have a figure like Tara, as we're hopefully in this transition, it's like a way to empower the sacred feminine within ourselves, whether we're male or female. And Tara in Tibet was not known to be like, okay, that's for women. And this kind of happened in the West, you know, where people are like, oh yeah, Tara's for women. In Tibet, it was definitely equal. Who practiced Tara was not a predominance of women by any means. Many great lamas, Tara was their main yidam. And of course, lay people and others who are not so well known as practitioners. So I say that Tara is the head of the Green Party because a couple of reasons. She's green. And she is the element of air of the five families. You know, the karma family is green. And so when you see a deity who is a certain color, it tells you what Buddha family they are. So green Tara is karma family. And that means element of air and action, swift action, like air, like wind. Of all the elements, what can move the fastest? Air. Think about like high winds of in a hurricane, 150 miles an hour. So she's green, and then she's an activist because Tara's in that posture of dismounting. It's called the dismounting posture, where she has her right leg extended and her left leg tucked in. And so she's stepping down from her meditation posture to come into the world. And this is such a beautiful metaphor for our situation. Many of us are in the world, we're working, we have families, we are involved with worldly life, and yet we have a strong spiritual life that's equally important to us. And so we're holding that stepping down and tucking in, because the left foot represents she's staying in meditation as she's stepping down. And so that's, I think, also really important for activists, that activists have a spiritual resource or spiritual resources that they can draw on as they're working in the relative world to change inequality or end wars or whatever ways that we are activists. It's important to have that inner power to draw on and to inform our outer activities. And so Tara is perfect for activists because she represents that. She's in that posture of being in meditation and active in the world, and she's swift. She's also a first responder. So Tara is the first responder from the Green Party. And that is an amazing being to have access to. And there's so many stories about Tara showing up in people's lives. And I have one myself that I will share with you. I mean, I have a few, but the most dramatic one happened not that long ago, although now it's getting to be longer. So it's probably about 8 years ago. I was in Colorado. I was at Mandala, and I had just finished a retreat. And I would often go when I had time to see my daughter Sharab and her family in Telluride, about 3 hours from Mandala, when I had time off. And so I had a few days, and I really felt this longing to see them. She had her son Otto then. She didn't have her son Enzo yet. So it was just Otto, and he was about 3 or 4 years old. And so I finished, and I was really tired. Like, I'm exhausted. Maybe I should stay here tonight at home and then go in the morning. And then I had this feeling like, no, you have to go now. You have to go tonight because you won't have much time with them otherwise. And I just had this feeling, hey, you've got to go. And so I went. And I drove, and I would always call her when I kind of come over the hill down into the beautiful valley of Telluride, which is an extraordinary sacred valley in Colorado. In fact, it was considered so sacred that the Native Americans would not allow people to know how to get there. And when they went there, they would blindfold new people going there so they wouldn't be able to find it again. But anyway, so I'm coming down the hill. I call my daughter, and she said, Mom, I'm at the emergency room. I was like, why? And she said, Otto drank poison. And we're deciding right now whether we should airlift him or get him to the hospital in Montrose. And she has this way of, when she's really worried about something, she gets extremely calm. It's sort of like, this is how I deal with stress. I just get super calm. Anyway, she was like that, and I was like, oh my God. And she said, I'm about to go home and grab a few things, come back to the hospital, meet me at the hospital. And so I did. I met them at the hospital. Otto was crying, and he was vomiting black stuff. And the people at the hospital were looking really worried. Eric, her husband, is the manager of the hospital in Telluride. He does everything there, from IT to when they need a new X-ray machine, he decides what they're getting, etc. He does everything. And so they knew Otto from when he was a child. It wasn't like sort of the random tourists coming in. And of course, they would have been concerned about that too, but this was almost like a family member. And I'm looking at them, I'm looking at Otto, and I'm just like, this isn't good. And so I started doing Tara practice right then, right in the hospital. While I was standing there, they got word that he should be airlifted to Denver. So that's about I think it's an 18-minute flight when they do it on a jet, and they have a jet for that, for the mountains, to get people quickly to a good hospital. And so the jet was on its way from Durango, where it had been, and was coming to Telluride over the mountains. And so we got in our cars and we drove to the airport. It was decided that Eric would go with him instead of Sherab, because Eric had left this poison out by mistake. It was gun bluing, to turn metal on guns blue. And he was using it on a sculpture that Sherab had done. She's an artist. And so he felt guilty about it. And it was like blue looking, and it was a little cup, and it was on the edge of the sink. So Otto ran in from playing, grabbed it, and drank it. And so he felt terrible, and Sheriff felt it's better if he's there and he feels like he in command and doing everything he can. Plus, he knows hospitals, he knows how to talk to these people. And she had a broken ankle and was on crutches. So he was going to go, she was going to stay, because only one adult could go on the jet. It was very small. And so they went to the airport. I went as well. And as we were waiting for the jet, I got online and I looked it up. I looked up, how poisonous is this stuff that he drank? And I saw that it was death, that they'd never had a case where somebody drank this and didn't die. I didn't say anything to them, but then I knew that. And so then I really started practicing even more of Tara. And then the plane arrived. Otto and Eric got on the plane. Shira hugged him goodbye, and she was like, I may never see my son again. You can imagine. And I was just practicing. In the meantime, I had called every Lama that I know that I could call. And I called Tara Mandala also, and they happened to be having a party because somebody was leaving Tara Mandala, moving out. And so they were having a party for them. And so I told them, and I said, please go to the temple right now and practice. And they did. And all the lamas that I knew got it, like how serious this was, and they were practicing. And then I was. And so as I saw the plane leaving, I saw Tara around the plane. Like the plane was like, had this green kind of like cloud around it. And Eric was in touch the whole way to the airport, and he landed. They went to the hospital, and the doctor greeted him and told him the likelihood of his son dying, realistically, that he should know this. And so I just continued doing Tara, and I did it all night. I didn't sleep. I just stayed up and did it. Saw Tara with Otto, and saw him surrounded by her. And so then in the morning, I was with Shara. I stayed with her that night, of course, and they called her and said, do we have your permission to do an internal, put a camera down there and kind of see what happens, see what the damage is? And she said yes. And so they said, okay, in a couple of hours, we'll let you know. And he was still alive. And so they did it. And they called us, Eric called us. He sent photographs as well of what they had found. And there was nothing. It was just little pink belly lining. There was no burns. There was like nothing had happened. They couldn't believe it in the hospital. They were like, this is impossible. Because they saw what had happened. They saw, they knew what it was. And so for me, that was Tara. What else could it be? There's nothing, no other explanation, really. So anyway, there's a lot of stories like this of Tara and of her quick response, her presence, and so on. So, yeah, she's also considered to be the Tara of the forest, the Kadira forest. So there's sort of two places that she's found. One is in this place called the Kadira forest, which is known to have lots of wild animals, lots of tropical fruit trees. It's kind of like a tropical paradise, the Kadira forest. And she's actually called from that forest. And she's also particularly connected to trees in that forest. So she's named sort of one of her epithets is Tara of the Sending forest. Sending is a particular kind of wood. It's actually used for the chudrums. And then the other place is Potala, which is, of course, the palace in Tibet, but that's named after a Pure Land. And Tara's from that Pure Land of Potala, as is Avalokiteshvara. So Pure Lands is a whole other thing that I never believed in until I had some experiences. So Pure Lands are dimensions of luminosity. They're not in this world. And you might think, well, if you can't see it, it doesn't exist. But think about how much in our lives already we can't see but exist. Like you can't see the beams of light or whatever is coming from me to you. How's that getting to you? You can't see that, but it's happening. So the Pure Lands are like that. So Tara is of the trees, and she's known as a fast responder, and she also overcomes the 8 fears. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Okay, so that's a little introduction to Green Tara. And now I'll give the Lung. So for the Lung, you just have to listen. You can close your eyes and meditate. I'll read it, some in Tibetan and some in English. And this is your authorization to do the practice and to take the online course of Tara. We also let people take it without the Lung, and then to get the Lung as soon as possible. So I gave this not long ago, but I'm going to give it again because not everybody was there who wanted to receive it. Okay, so Lung means prana or wind. And so it's hearing. And the idea is that you have to have that intimate connection with the practice that you actually meet somebody who holds the lineage, holds the transmission, and you receive it from them through Lung, through air, through hearing it. Okay. Are you ready? So get in a position to just listen. Clear my throat. And I will read it. This particular practice is from Azamdrupa. It's a terma of Azamdrupa, who was a Lama in Tibet who lived from 1842 to 1924. And Chogyal Namkha Norpa Rinpoche was considered to be a reincarnation of him, who, of course, I had a very close connection with. And also, there was another Azamdrupa in Tibet, and Azam Pelo Rinpoche is a tulku of his son. And my son, Tulku Urso, was also one of Azamdrupa's children in his previous life. And according to Azam Rinpoche, I was also Azamdrupa's consort in that life. But it doesn't really matter because this is this life. And I'll talk more about this particular practice afterwards. But it is from the Ursel Dorje Sangzo. That's the terma cycle of Azamdrupa. Ursel is luminosity. It can be translated as clear light, but in Dzogchen, you say Ursel, it's to do with luminosity. And then Sang is secret, and Zo means treasury. So that's what it's from. So that's the collection that it's from. And then it's called the Pakma Drolma Jangmo Shukso. Shukso means here within. So Pakma is sublime. Drolma is Tara. I said in the beginning, liberating woman or feminine liberator. And Jangmo means green. So this is from Azamdrupa Dojo Pao Dorje. That's the full name of Azamdrupa. Okay, the first part is the Dechen Barwe prayer, which is of this terma. It's a general prayer that Azamdrupa and Azam Rinpoche put before all of their practices. And it's a widely known prayer. It's not just them that do it. It's a prayer that brings the energy of the Padma family into the situation, wherever it's done. Padma family is the red family, the fire family, and it magnetizes energy. So the sort of title of this is a prayer to magnetize the world of all appearances and possibilities. So this is a very powerful prayer to know and to memorize. Okay. Om Yahon Shri Dechen Bawe Wanki Potrandu Deton Sosoto Beye Sheku Maja Deten Pemerangin Le Doje Nima Nawa Chempo Chuku Nawa Tai Doje Chu Jikten Wanchu Tu Cheje Sasu Pema Gyalpo Kode Nawa Ju Nansi Shilyan Wanchen Hiruka Sanwa Yeshe Benza Barahi Demcho Dope Gyalpo Dechen Te Malu Kegurik Churik Jema Chotun Chake Wanchu Detunka Wanze Dorje Pao Dakitso Nanton Yamba Chembo Nanidu Dorje Kui Garki Shitsam Ye Game Sumki Shede Kamsungu Urse Marpo Kodeyana Kya Shisendangu Yoshendu Parje Dorje Shaba Chempo Tukini Nani Nudu Toko Sososhin Dorje Shaku Shapa Chempo Yi Nasi Dewa Chempo Damjepa Tai Yutro Drawa Rokarchen Tyoki Kombo Shewa Jinsu Rajan Sasun Wanki Latsola Gyupe Soa Deso Jinjila Chotan Nudu Tokyo Peldada Tome Wandu Chepe Nudu So. So this is a invocation that you do at the beginning, and it hooks in that magnetizing energy to your practice. There are, by the way, 21 taras, 21 manifestations of Yeshidawa, and they all have different specific roles and activities. So it's really good to know all 21 taras and to practice them. And our Dorji Lopun, my student, Lopun Chandra Easton, has written an amazing book about the 21 taras and called Embodying Tara. And so I think there's a link that was just put in. So that's an important book to read and follow. And she's also teaching a wonderful online course over a year of the 21 taras, where you learn about all of them. And you can still get into this, of course. So that's just a little footnote. Wonderful, wonderful book, Embodying Tara, the 21 manifestations to awaken your innate wisdom. Dorji Lopun Chandra Easton. Okay, now the 7-line prayer. This is not a part of the Tara practice either, but it's an invocation of Guru Rinpoche, and it's done at the beginning because of Guru Rinpoche's connection to all termas. Hom Ojinyoki Nucham Sam Pema Gesar Dambola Yansan Chugi Nudrupne Pema Jone Shesudrak Kordu Kandro Mangpo Kor Keiki Jesun Drak Drupchi Jinji Lapchir Shesu So Guru Pema Siddhi Hum. And a supplication to Azam Pelo Rinpoche. Kyapdak Yawa Namdak Yerme Pe Katrin Sumden Trinchin Lama Je Rigzin Jorme Tupten Jamso La Sowa Debso Yamlan Tarshin Shu, and then the invocation to the root Lama. Omen Chuki Yinki Potrane Dusum Sanji Kunki Ngoni Rangsem Chuku Monson Tonze Pe Sawe Lama Shapla Sowa Deb. So that's all preliminaries. And then you have the description, which you don't recite, of what this practice does. I'll read that in English. In order to have protection from fears and disharmonious circumstances, to attain relative and absolute siddhis and fulfill wishes, the one who gives birth to the victorious ones, the mother of all the Buddhas, practice the sadhana of heroic swift Tara. And then refuge and bodhicitta. Now we're in the actual practice. Namo jigdang dunyal dukkale drochir pamadro mar kyapki ningpo ten mondang jukpe changchup semke de ichendro kun kyopa damshao za hum bam ho sokshin namrang timbar jor. Then the description of what she looks like. Tam chokungo kane dak zonzen trope le de pe shaye kyang u pe de teng tam yeg jangu yongjur pe jetun kundo jang jetun droma kudang jang shachik chakni shitsum she lonko chetso yekang ro chakye chochin chakya yi chira dunya yukchin se chakyong tukar Choksum ge Nieten Utpa Langso she Mune Ursel Dangche Tser Utro Yingne Yeshepa Pame Chendrang Yerme Jur. And the invocation. O Maria Tare Saparivare Vajra Samayaza. So now this is the moment of joining of Jnana Sattva and Samaya Sattva. Tishta Vajratam Atipo Ho Pratishta Ho Maria Tare Saparivara Vajra Samaya Za Tishta Vajratam Atipo Ho. So the Arya Tare Saparivara Vajra Samaya Za, that's the joining of Samaya Sattva, Jnana Sattva, and then Tishta Vajratam Atipo Ho Pratishta Ho. You're acknowledging that although you are bringing the Jnana Sattva, the wisdom beings, into this created visualization, the Samaya Sattva, you're recognizing that in actuality, they have never been separated. And then the offerings. Argam Padyam Pushpe Dupe Aloke Gande Naveja Shapta Rupa Shapta Gande Ratsa Sparshe Dharma Pratishta Ho Pansa Balinta Rakta Kai. Yawa Kun Yom Dugnyal Kundro Ma Nyurma Pamo Jango Marge Dan Lonku Genden Gekte Drale Gyal Pama Tuche Chenla Chatsal Tu Tukar Datang Tam Yig Jang. This is the visualization. Tukar Datang Tam Yig Jang Naki Tremwa Korwale Öser Trundu Duni Je Namni Dewa Chembur Jur. That's the visualization for the recitation of the mantra. And now the mantras, I'll say them each 3 times for the transmission of the mantra. Om Tare Tam Swaha. Om Tare Tam Swaha. Om Tare Tam Swaha. And the heart, that's the heart mantra. Then the action mantra. This is actually Green Tara's mantra. The other one is the heart mantra of all the Taras. This is Green Tara. Om Tare Tutare Ture Swaha. 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 And then you do the recitation of the mantras. And then this is the description of what happens. Being a superior, middling, or lesser yogi depends on one's remaining karma. Signs come from that. So exert yourself. Do more elaborate practice. Recite. To do more elaborate practice, recite the longer Dharani, which is the Dharani of the praises of the 21 Taras. And these are the purification mantras that you do after you've done the other mantras to purify any mistakes you've made in pronunciation or visualization or your intention. Om I Om I Ri Lili O Om Kaka Gaganga Tata Tatana Tata Tatana Tata Dadana Papa Babama Yara Lawa Shakasa Kya. And then the mantra of purification, 100-syllable mantra of Vajrasattva. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tino Pa Tishta Tino Mebawa Sutashayo Mebawa Suposhayo Mebawa Anuraktu Mebawa Saura Siddhi Me Prayasa Sarva Karma Tsutsa Me Tsitam Shriyam Kuru Hum Ha Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajramame Munsa Vajri Bhava Mahasamaya Sattva Ahum Pet. And the Tendral Ningpo, the mantra of interdependence. Om Yedharma Hetu Prabhava Hetu Teken Tathagato Hayawata Teken Sayo Niroda Evam Vandi Mahashramanai Swaha. And then the benefits of the practice: pacify previous karma, sudden accidents, difficulties, sickness, and negative forces, increase life, abundance, accomplishments, wisdom, bring under control prana, mind, and appearances. The 18 great duns are tamed by your state. Om Aryatari, these are the offerings after the mantras. Om Aryatari Sa Parivara. Vajra Argam Padyam Pushpe Dupe Aloke Gande Naveja Shapta Rupa Shapta Gande Rasa Sparshe Dharma Pratishta Ho Pansa Balinta Rakta Kai. And the praises again. Gyawa Kunyun Duknyal Kundroma Nyurma Pamo Jango Margeda Lonko Genden Duke Drale Gyal Pama Tuche Chenla Chatsa Altu. Okay, and then the closing prayers. The Ningtik protectors, Hong, Paldeneka, Jati, Dang, Johnson, Kachan, Rahula, Damshan, Dorji, Lekpatso, Ningtin, Yembo, Densu, So, Damse, Duse, Tormapo, Najo, Dal, Akunjo, So, Chowe, Trine, Maye, Drup, Hon, Sengobarwa, Misumpo, Mimatama, Machichen, Paldemarpo, Metarwa, Sentarmarpo, Lunta, Kyo, Zanri Barwe, Pundumpo, Senko Sumja, Drukchu, Che, Drutar Dershing Lo O Kyo Tonta Chamchen Serkim Bep Dershi Gemba Tormashe Machi Lapton Chenaru Kelan Damsen Denzola Choyo Demba Zonwandang Choken Daki Dronzo Yila Nape Drola Mitun Tata Chotun Tun Choe Tunai Drupar. So that's a Zonre Sen protector, a particular protector of Machi Lapton. Dedication. Gewa di nyurdu dak chetsun droma drupcher ne droa chicha malaba de salagobar sho. Praises again. Gewa kunki dunya kundroma nyorma pama jango margedang longu gendan duke drala gel pama tukche chenchi tashi sho. Closing lineage prayer. Rekpa zimba jorme dorje dan gewa sepo pema wanki gel Jetsun kunzang chime wangmo je, soa debso nyamlan tarshen sho. Long life prayer for His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Gangri rawe korwe shinkam su pendang dewa malu jungwe ne, chenrizi wang tenzin jatso shape kyagye bardu tenjuchi, chunle namka tabur drupar sho. Om swasti. Lume kyabne jatso tu jenji, tendro gumpon trinchin chojiche, Jerme tupten jamso pelzong po, shape tenzin zetren kunchap sho. Long life prayer for Jetsun Kacho Wamo. Om swasti rajang yawa kunki dentoki, Jetsun droma namtro chime wong, chope dokar sherap chotsu chok, shape tenzin zetren kunchap sho. That's Azam Rinpoche's long life prayers and his sister. This is one that Sanak Rinpoche wrote for me. Om Swasti. Machi glabki druma yesheku, Jetsun kater chuyu zunzima, Jetsun Lama Tsultrim Chudan chok, kuse tartan zetrin kejor shik. This is a prayer that Azam Pela Rinpoche wrote for Tulku Urtsa. Om Swasti. Pejung bima baro, Tukitse lopon yudra ningpo trupe ku, Rigzen ursel dorje tendropel, Shape tenzin zetrin tarje sho. Prayer for all the lamas. Lama kukan zangwa soadev chotu kuse ringwa soadev tunne tarshan shepar soadev. Lama drandrowa me margin shila. You might ask why all these long life prayers? Because at the end of the Buddha's life, when he was about to die, he said, I would have lived longer had I been requested. Said that to Ananda, his attendant. And Ananda felt so bad that, he hadn't made the request. So it's part of the tradition. And then the prayer for the people of the earth. Zamlang chidang yodi kamti taktu, nemot sonzo dunyam mimi drak, chuden sonam peljo gondu pel taktu tashi dele punso sho. Prayer for the post-meditation, Nandar Brigsun Lama Chukunang, Kudang Yeshiro Pajamle Pe, Zabsang Naljo Chembo Nyamnan La, Yerme Tuki Tiglero Chikshu. 100-syllable mantra to purify any mistakes. Om Vajrasatta Samaya Manapalaya Vajrasatta Tina Pati Tatina Meboa, Sutushaya Meboa, Supashaya Meboa, Anurakta Meboa, Shawar Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sawar Kamatsutsa Me Titam Shriyam Kuruhung Ha Ho Bhagavan Savatata Kata Vajrama Me Mansa Bezri Bhava Mahasamaya Sapa Ahu Pet. So, feast offering. Invitation to join the feast. Ramyam Kamo Mahum. Ranki Tuke Usaki Jetsun Droma Jangmola Tatsum Jamso Tsoki Kor Chendrang Pede Denla Shuk Nime Gyupe Chacho Pul Alalaho Agampadyam Pushpe Dupe Aloke Gande Naveja Shapta Rupa Shapta Gande Ratsa Sparshe Dharma Gana Shakra Kai Om Tare Tam Swaha Gana Shakra Kutsa Kaka Kai. Digmeling for short so Ramyam Kamoma Hum Sosi Dunya Yeshurup again Sochi Soda Reason Lamadan Dansam Kwe Kyoko Neo Nirshida Pao Kandra Damsan Chusum Nam Dershi Lonjo Soki Chupashe Yetro Namdan Dansi Namcha Shak Chinam Pachi Chuki Ying so draw Lacto Shela Trina Drubatso Om Guru Deva Da Kini Gana Shakra Putza Ho Ushita Balinta Kai. Confession. Ho Gongshi Chetsun Pamayum Dakni Marik Wongdu Sho Song Damsik Namchak Yetros Shore Ngongo Godo Lenje Dom Doyan Dutse Tsokcho Di Tsokni Tsokshin Namchak Shak Daksang Chutan Nudup So Samaya Shude Tsoki Chupa Jenduro Alalaho Oma Homa Sukha Siddhi Alalaho Remainders Ramyam Kam Oma Homha Hoshi Sarvadaki Nipem Pem Ushita Bakadi Balinta Kai Hahi Gata Samaya Jaja. That seals it. And then the Faithful Student Song, not part of the Torah practice, but it is how we do the Torah. It's a song that was written at the time when Azam Pelo Rinpoche was reconstructing a very important temple in Tibet called Chari Lakang. And that was when we met him. This was happening. He had only gotten 3 months to reconstruct an entire temple, which was several stories high and made out of rock. And then they were going to end the permission, Chinese. And so they worked day and night, and this was one of their work songs. And they did it, by the way, along with getting up really early and doing many prostrations before they started this very arduous work, carrying these rocks from far away, chipping them into the shape of bricks, and then with cement, putting them together to create a huge 2-story temple. Okay, so this is the song. Kuncha rinchinam sum dungwe ningne puna tuche genji zero resa shena medo toka mi luten mi top lepse shido denshin ayo denden kasamoma nadu pone tsopa namshi lode mindu ningne chiwa samshi denden kasamoma Ledre lume yempe, mige topa punction, lacho gewa tsonro, denen kasonoma. Korwa gume ludre, yitsem chapa meba, dare talam drosho, denden kasonoma. Lose nisumi be, dome muguyona, shima lala nyamdro, denen kasonoma. Jurma tupten jamso, ningne lama donga, Damnak de la medu, ning tam ning la churo, aho alalaho, atzar tsalubo yo. I'll read that in English because I think the meaning's really special and maybe inspirational. Kuncho rinchin namsum, dungwe ningne buna, Tuche genji zero, resa shena medo, topka mi luten, mitak topap lepse, shido denshin ayo, denden kasonoma. Oh, sorry, I was reading in English. To the 3 precious jewels, I call with heartfelt longing. Please turn your compassionate gaze to me. I have no other hope. The human body is difficult to obtain. So it's not just the human body, it's the precious human body, which has the quality of having met the Dharma. Will you be confident in the face of death? When impermanence descends, will you be confident in the face of death? Faithful, fortunate student, since it's a collection of 5 elements and 5 aggregates, your consciousness isn't reliably there in your body. Faithful student, actions never fail to bear fruit. Give up thoughts of non-virtue, make efforts in the holy Dharma. Faithful, fortunate student, Samsara's illusions ensnare. Let your mind be without attachment. Escape right now onto the path of liberation. Faithful, fortunate student, when your mind is not too pointed, your devotion is irreversible. Together, the Lama and disciple go. The Lama and disciple. Rinpoche would always go, not two, one, or like that. Together, the Lama and disciple go. Faithful, fortunate student. Jurme Tupten Jamso, that's Rinpoche's name. To long for the Lama from the depths of one heart. There are no pith instructions higher than that. Please keep this hard advice in your heart. Aho alalaho atzar tsalubo yo. And then a prayer to Tara. Om chakso jetsun tare lama. Tu tare she dongwa kuncho. Tuche tokme tu tare pamo. Dakla drupchok sochi swaha. Om tare tu tare ture swaha. And that is short Tara. And then Om tare tam swaha. Gyauyam droma keki chi drang dang kordang kutse sedang shinkam dang keki tsenchok zangpo chidrawa deda korna dakso jurwa shok. Yeah. Again, the dedication for that short prayer. Kewadi Unyor Dadar Jesandroma Drujane Droa Chichamalabade Salagobar Shoko. Okay. So that's the loan of Tara. Now you have it. You keep your text as a sacred thing. I put it on my head because it's considered to give a blessing to put a sacred text on your head. And we always honor our texts. We don't just kind of leave them around. Keep them in a special way. Okay, so now I'm going to answer questions. And so you can put your questions in. Can't go back through all of them. If you put them in early, you might put them in again. And you're welcome, everybody who's saying thank you. I'm happy to give this. It's an amazing practice from Azam Drukpa. And the practice itself is, it's really relatively easy to learn. It's not very complicated on Vajrayana standards. And there's a lot to say about it. And it's all in the Green Tara online course. So I'm not going to teach more on it right now because we don't have time, but I wanted to leave this open. Let's see if there's any pictures, any questions. Is there a daily practice text? Yes, absolutely there is. You can get that when you get the online course. And you can also order it from our bookstore, store@taramandala.org. Let me just see if there's any questions I'm missing. What would you recommend for someone who's practiced meditation for years to add the Tara practice once a week? Yes, you can do it once a week, or once a day, or twice a day, or you really can't get the power of our practice unless you do it intensely for a while. And so in the Magyu, in the mother lineage of Tara Mandala, we require everyone to do 3 weeks of solitary retreat of Tara and to droop it. Drooping it is a certain number of accumulations of the mantra. And then once you droop a practice, it's considered that you have the power of the mantra. However, you can do that in 3 different weeks. And if you're not in a position to do that, don't feel like, oh, I can't do this. And if you're not in a position to do it daily, don't worry, do it however much you can. But I do recommend that now, once you get this transmission and then you do it, that you do the course, and then do it daily for a month to really get it into your system. And then you can choose, how much to do it. That's my recommendation. But it's not that you must do that. And so, not related to this, but I'm interested in stupa building. Where can I learn more about it? There's several books on stupa building, but really you need a Lama to guide you who has built stupas. With our stupa at Mandala, we had the very precious advice of Sanak Rinpoche. Tulku Sanak is an expert in stupa building. He built the 8 stupas at Sheshan Gumpa in Nepal. He's built a lot of stupas. You could request his help, but you're in Hungary, that's pretty remote. So I would try to find a Lama in Europe who would support you. You also need to get relics. Stupas, the main thing about a stupa is the relics. If it doesn't have relics, it's not really a stupa. So you have to go to different lamas and ask for relics to put in the stupa. And then there's a certain way you put them in on the Sokshing, the tree at the center of the stupa. It's called the Sokshing, of the tree of life. And you tie the relics onto the tree of life, which represents the spine or the central channel of the Buddha that's inside the stupa. But anyway, there's a lot of things, as you know, Jack. I think you're understanding it's complex. I built another stupa in New York State at my home in New York, and there was another Lama that helped me with that. It's the first one I did. I think doing things traditionally is very important because there's a reason for everything in the tradition. And so it's important to do it properly and get good advice. And also the proportions, you can't just make up, like, I think it should look like this. The proportions are important. They all have meaning. Every step of the stupa has a meaning. So, yeah. Let's see. Is it safe to assume that the power and impact of your dialoguing with green tar or any deity's effect is affected by the cleanliness of your aspiration? Of course. Aspiration and intention is everything in Mahayana. If you don't have good intentions, you can do a great practice and it doesn't have a good result. So that's why we always generate. Yes, Aviv, there are in-person courses. I haven't done one myself for a long time, but that's maybe an idea that I would. Since we have the online course, I haven't done it so much in person, but there are others who do it. My son, Tuku Uso does it, Lopan Chandra does it, and Lopan Charlotta. They all give green Tara transmission and courses. Yes, I talked about frequency, talked about that. The day after the Long, do you recommend being vegetarian? It's always good to be vegetarian. And yeah, when you're doing certain things, you have to be vegetarian. Receiving a Long or taking an empowerment, not necessarily, but there's certain kinds of empowerments that you must if they're in Kriya Yoga. You know, in the Tibetan tradition with its Tsok, you have to eat meat because it symbolizes overcoming thoughts of impure and pure and creates a positive connection for that animal when it's done in a tsok or a feast offering. Creates a karmic connection with that. That's part of the tantric tradition. But to be predominantly vegetarian is good. And of course, vegan is even better. But it also depends on your health, the advice of your doctor, so many things. But yes, Yes, good to not do it today. Let's see if there's any more questions. Thank you for all the thank yous. Are the 5 dakinis the same as the 5 female Buddhas of the 5 Dhyana Buddhas families? So they are not, and they are, in the sense that the 5 female Buddhas and the 5 dakinis are of the same families. So let's say the Buddha Dakini and the white Datvitsvati, the female Buddha, are both Buddha family. And then Padma Dakini and Pandaravasini are both Padma family. So they share that connection of the 5 families, but they're different in the sense that the Dakinis have a different energy than the female Buddhas. The Dakinis are Dakinis. They have a very active energy. They're often fierce and so on. And the 5 female Buddhas are peaceful and they have a different energy. So that's true of any deity. You know, if you could say, are the 5 Dakinis different than the 5 male Buddhas? Yes, they're the same because they're of the 5 families. They're based in the Mandala principle, but they're male and they have a peaceful energy as opposed to the Dakinis who have different kind of energy. So the answer is yes and no. Is concentrating on the short Tara Mandala an effective practice? Yes, that's a very blessed practice. That one that I did at the end, it's like a little mini kind of dharani, which is kind of like a recitation that you would do. And it picks out each word in the Om Tari Tutari Ture Swaha mantra, and then it sort of says something about each one of those segments of that mantra. So that's a good thing to do. And the other thing is that Tara is one practice that you can do without receiving an empowerment, just receiving the lung for it, because it's considered that Tara is always available to everyone. And so she gives that kind of access. In general, if you have the lung and the explanation of a practice, you can do it. But generally, also, it's much better to have the empowerment for it. But when Azam Rinpoche gave this to us to give, he said, just give the lung. And so you have that now. And the other thing is you can do Tara mantras without the lung and without anything like any kind of transmission. She's one of the few deities that's true of, for the same reason that she's just making herself accessible to everyone. And that's why we put on our social media, sometimes we do campaigns to stop wars or stop epidemics, etc., with Tara mantras, because it's not essential to have the lung. It's, of course, better to have the lung, but not essential for Tara. Gayatana, your question about green Tara and Karma Dakini. So it's the same answer that I gave before, that there's elements that are the same because they're the same Buddha family, but they have different energies. But a lot of the same as well. Yes, you should attend the online course. I really encourage that. It's a really good course. It's not too long, and you learn everything. You learn the hand movements, you learn how to do the whole practice, and much more explanations given than I gave here. So when you do it, then you have that. So that's called the tree, the explanation. There's the Wang, the empowerment, the Lung, what I just gave, the hearing transmission, and the tree, the explanation. So that's what the online course has. Kiri, did you get it? If you had an interruption, if you got the mantra, you got it. Those part where I did the 3 recitations of the mantras. Let's see. Is the tanka behind you four-armed form of Mother Tara? No, that is a tanka of White Tara, and she is in union with Amitayas, and that's a very unusual practice. Where it's Yom Yab. Usually, the Yab is the principal figure, and the Yom is the secondary figure that has the back to the person looking at it. So yeah, it's Yab Yom. I don't know if you can see, but there's 2 figures there, and they each have 2 arms, so it looks like 4. What is important offerings to place on the altar for daily practice? Well, it's good to have the 7 offering bowls. Argham Padyam are the first 2 for drinking water and washing water. Pushpe is the next one, and that's flowers. Dupe is the next one, that's incense. Aloke is the next one, that is light. Gande is the next one, and that is perfume. And Naveja is food, like a piece of fruit or something. And then, although Sue, who's head of our Sangha here in Encinitas, she always puts chocolate, since that's what she likes. So, yeah, Naveja, and then Shapta, something that symbolizes sound. It could be a shell, because shells can make sound. Or if you put them to your ear, you can hear the ocean in them. Or like a little musical instrument. So that goes from left to right. I'll just say it again in order. You can just get 7 bowls and do this, or you can get the more traditional bowls. In Europe, you can order them from Kamala Shila. That is a center in Germany. And I'm sure there's other places, I just don't know of them in Europe. In the United States, store@taramandala.org, you can get them from us. Okay, so I'm going to just say them again. Drinking water, washing water, flowers, and this is left to right. Drinking water, washing water, flowers, incense, light, perfume, food, and sound. Actually 8, with the addition of the food, which is often a separate thing. Like this is my food offering. It's called the Naveja Torma. It's a Torma. But a piece of sort of long-lasting fruit is good. And then it's okay not to change the water every day, but generally you do change the water every day, but the other things you can leave until they it's time to change them, like the flower will wilt and so on. For perfume, I usually put an essential oil, a little bottle of essential oil. And for the food, if I don't have the Naveja Torma, I'll often put something like an orange, which lasts a long time. Okay, let's see. Is it 21 Tara Mantras that we do daily? No, it's both mantras, Om Tare Tam Swaha and Om Tare Tutare Tore Swaha. Both. In the proportions of how much of each one you do, because you're accumulating Tara, you do more of the heart mantra, Om Tare Tam Swaha, and then about 1/3 less of the Om Tare Tutare Tore Swaha. So Om Tare Tam Swaha is more, about 1/3 more. So let's say you do 100, and then you do 30 of the action mantra. Yes, Namke Norbu practice, of course, that's okay. If you have another Tara practice, of course, that's okay. This is just this particular one. Do the different color Taras have different elemental effects? Yes, and they also have the energy of that element. Like if it's red, it's fire. If it's green, it's air. So those elements have a different energy, and then they have those wisdoms connected to the Buddha families. So if it's green, it's the wisdom of all accomplishing action. And that's why Tara is invoked for activities. If it's white deity, the wisdom is the wisdom of Dharmadhatu, of total space, spaciousness. So it's the power of meditation. If it's Vajra, blue, and Vajra and Buddha can change places in terms of white and blue, but anyway, if it's Vajra and blue, it's the wisdom of the mirror-like wisdom. If it's our earth family, the yellow Ratna family, the wisdom is the wisdom of equanimity, evenness, equalness. If it's Padma, it's the wisdom of discernment. And if it's karma, again, the wisdom of accomplishing actions. Okay. Mickey, you're asking, can you merge the two? I wouldn't put them together because lineage is important, just to keep things separate. But you could do like one in the morning and one in the evening, or however you divide your day. Yeah, it's interesting. Tara's 8 laughs. I've been thinking about that. And yeah, maybe there's a fear of Tara, the female laughter. I don't know. I don't know exactly why it was her laughter, but, I think it's powerful, her laughter. Yes, Fiona, I'm sorry you feel not well enough to take the course. Yes, absolutely do the short Tara practice daily, and you can also just do the mantra. But at least do Tam to become her, generate bodhicitta to begin with, and then do the Tam to become her, and then a second Tam, Tam, her seed syllable, to invoke the Jnana Sattvas, and a third Tam of the Jnana Sattvas coming into you. And so now you're one with them, and then the mantra, and then dedication at the end. Grazie Paolo, spero di vederti in Italia. Sarò lì il 1 novembre fino al 3. Let's see. Other question. Is Tara transmission you gave us from the Dzogchen tradition? Yes. It's Terma, it's Nyingma tradition. It's not Dzogchen, it's Tantra. It's a deity yoga practice, but the lineage that it's in is Dzogchen lineage. There's a project in Europe for building stupas, a part of Namkhe Norbu's Dzogchen community. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. He built several very powerful stupas in Marigar, and was very supportive of that. I'm very happy. Sorry to hear that's happening. There is a retreat in France of my son. I'm not teaching in France this time. Maybe next time. But make a request. Let people know in France from our Sangha there that you're interested for me to teach in France, because our French community is quite small. Yeah, it's a live offering. The course, yes, there are live offerings. The next one I know of that's happening is next spring at Mandala, and that will be with Lopen Charlotta, who does a wonderful job teaching this. And I think also Tugoroso may be helping. They did it together this year, but I'm not, one of them I remember had a conflict. Generate is what you did at the beginning of this session by summoning. Generate, yes, generate, but that's how you generate bodhicitta. You summon it. But, you know, there's lots of different things you can generate. Please repeat the short mantra, yes. Om Tare Tam Swaha. And the second one is called the action mantra, and that's for green Tara specifically. I'll do the first one 3 times, so in case you missed it. Om Tare Tam Swaha, Om Tare Tam Swaha, Om Tare Tam Swaha. And green Tara, Om Tare Tutare Ture Swaha, Om Tare Tutare Ture Swaha, Om Tare Tutare Ture Swaha. It was one of the first mantras I learned. I was nun. I had become a nun. So this was 1970, and I would walk around the stupa where I was living, and this Lama would walk with me, and he would say mantras and then tell me to say them after him. And one was Tara. And so he'd get me to say them until I could remember them. So I've been doing it since then. My kids know it. My grandchildren know it. Let's see. I'm scrolling down. Yeah, thank you for putting it. Is there a particular Tara associated with the healing paralysis or arthritis? I think that would be the third Tara, connected to longevity and health. Yeah. And take that course with Lopan Chandra, because you'll learn about all of them. But that's what I would suggest. Oh, analeptic set. Oh, I'm so sorry, Jenny. That must have been horrible, and I'm sure it still is. Always present for you. Good. You did the Tara mantra. Yes, I mean, loss is, it's helpful to do green Tara with loss, because you become Tara, and then you can send out love and blessings to all those other people who are grieving, as well as all those who have been lost to various different difficult circumstances. So when David died, and I really had a pretty extreme experience of grief, I did Tara practice for all of those who had lost loved ones. And I also did Tonglen for them, breathing in their suffering, breathing out love and compassion. And it was oddly the only thing that really helped me with grief was taking on the grief of others, which is so paradoxical, because I felt like I can't take on more. I can't hardly survive with what I've got, but I did it because of the practice. And it was oddly healing, because it broke through the isolation that grief contains. Grief isolates us. And it made me have love and connection with others in a different way through the Tonglen practice and Tara practice. So I'm so sorry. I just cannot imagine what that was like for you. And yeah, do it. Yeah, you can do it, and you can help. Yes, Saraswati's different from white Tara. Saraswati's connected to the arts, to music, to all of the arts, and to philosophy. And white Tara is more connected with longevity and meditation. The empowerment. When Toku Oso, my son, gives this in person, he gives a blessing empowerment. And so you could get it from him. And if I do it again, I will give it also. Chime Tara, that's the long life Tara, that's white Tara. Chime Pakmeng Ning Tik, yeah, that's the Tanka, yeah. Thank you, Alexandra, yes. Let's see. I'm just looking for questions. Yes, you can do the practice in English, Claire. That's fine. Of course, you don't do the mantra in English. It's always done in Sanskrit. It seems like the deities would be forgiving of our clumsy efforts to call them up. So is much of the practice related to honoring and showing respect, even while that may not be crucial for getting a response. Yes. And it's also, it's kind of like what I was saying about building the airplane. Like all those little details are kind of like part of the formula for the most powerful practice. So that's why it's good to learn the details, but of course, at the absolute level, it's not necessary. The red Tara, there's so many lineages in Tibetan Buddhism, and the Dujam Tara is one of them, and they're all perfect. They all have great blessings, and they're all different. And so it's just kind of what your karma is in terms of your connection, that what you end up with. Karma is very connected to lineage, or lineage is very connected to our karma. Okay, let's see. Do you throw your, yes, once they're wilted or raw, you put them somewhere where beings might eat them, so that they would get the blessing of them. Oh, good question. Is there a place in the house where we set up an altar? Well, we have all different kinds of houses. Some people live in one room, a lot of people. So you just find a corner where you set it up. It's good not to have your feet going toward it when you sleep. So up on your, behind you or to the side is better. And then in the house, it's better, of course, a quiet place and a place where a lot of other activities don't take place. I know people who have converted a closet into their altar, their shrine room. So I say, oh, you're a closet Buddhist. There's a saying in Dzogchen that I find really helpful, which is work with your circumstances. I met somebody once who in Italy, and I always remember this because it struck me. I said, so are you doing your Vajrayogini practice now while you travel? And he said, oh, I couldn't bring my shrine with me, so I'm not doing it. And so that's not correct. Like, you can do things. It's ideal to have everything perfect, but don't not do it because you don't have the perfect situation. Oh, good. There's Torah Mandala, France. It'd be great to get more Torah Mandala energy in France. Can you say more about the meaning of Jnana Sattva? I think this will be my last question. Jnana Sattva means wisdom being. So all those beings that became enlightened, or maybe always were enlightened, that are sort of individuated to the point of being a specific deity, that energy, they are jnana sattvas. And so all those wisdom beings, of course, they're full of compassion. And so you can invoke them and call them in to your visualization. And so the jnana sattvas literally means the wisdom beings of the universe. So I consider also Christ to be a jnana sattva, because Christ was a great bodhisattva and possibly even reached the rainbow body. Maybe that's what happened to him. What he taught is so similar to Mahayana. So anyway, I have a relationship with Christ, and I feel he is in the Sambhogakaya. So it's not like only Buddhists are wisdom beings, but we as Buddhists, specifically invoke those presences. Okay, so here we are. I wanted to say one more thing at the end of the of this, and that is that we have a very important retreat that is starting this fall, or restarting, and that is the second part of what's called the Sikdunzo, and it means the treasury of precious meaning, and it's a very advanced Dzogchen teaching focusing on Togel and also Trekchö. It's being given by Adzam Gyaltse Rinpoche. That he's giving it online is pretty amazing, and that it's open is pretty amazing also. And he gave the beginning of it earlier this year, but he is allowing people to come in to the second part. Even if you didn't take the first part, you can still come into it, which is also amazing. And then at the end, he'll give the lung of the whole thing. So that's starting again. All of you who did it already, I know will be excited. We have dates for it now. And so that's all, I think, probably in the chat by now. Sik Dunzo. Sik means words, literally. Dun means meaning, and Zo is treasury. It's one of Longchenpa's 7 treasures, and it's extremely powerful, and it's long and in depth, and it's incredible that this is being given. So I really encourage you to receive it, even though you think, well, I'm not very advanced, I don't know. Just to receive it is a blessing, and it will mature in you as you kind of catch up to it. All right, so let's dedicate our merit, and thank you all for your thank yous. It's great to be with you. I can't see you. I don't know how many of you were here today, but I am really happy that you were here, whoever was. And I'd love to talk about Tara. It's, Tara Mandala for a reason. So thank you, Layla. She just wrote a little something about, or Leela, about the Dzogchen, the meaning of Sikdunzo. So, okay, let's generate our merit distribution. Dedicating the merit, it's called. I'll do the one from the Tara practice. Gewadi nyordu da chetsun droma drupcherne drowa chikyon maluba de salagobar sho. Thank you. Thank you. Reza, I'm glad you're here with us. I know it's been a tough time for you, and I hope you're gaining strength and getting better. Thank you, everyone, for your thank yous. And wonderful that you were here and that we shared this time together. So I'll see you, whoever I see in Europe, and then we'll be back with Lama Live sometime around, probably in December. And then we'll see how it all develops from there. Keep an eye open, and we'll also be announcing it on social media. And by the way, if you aren't following us on social media, please do so. We do a lot there, and I think it's supportive and helpful to be there. And also, we have this platform that Dreamy was talking about called Yana, and it's a whole internet platform with its practices every day, and sometimes several times a day, all over the world, that are taking place online. There's places you can ask questions. There's just so much on there, and Dreamy, our precious Dreamy, is overseeing all that. She's doing a great job, and there's thousands of people there on that platform. It's in something called Mighty Networks, but we have different aspects of Tara Mandala on there, and it's not Facebook. But we are on Facebook too. Whatever you feel about Facebook, we took our platform off there so people didn't have to subject themselves to what Facebook does. But I am active on Facebook because I have so many people there. And the Lama Tsultrim Allione, and also I'm on Instagram, same name. So I'll see you there, and lots of love and blessings, and thank you to Dreamy for today. Thank you.
Lamala, on behalf of truly everyone, I'd like to offer our deepest thanks to you for your dedication to really embracing our entire Sangha across the world through this live stream. Thank you. It makes such a profound difference to be able to connect with you in this way, Lamala, to ask questions and have them answered. So we are just truly blessed by your presence, guidance, and care. And to everyone here, thank you for being part of this community, for helping to make it what it is. I can't wait for the next opportunities we'll have to gather and connect. And if you feel called to practice Green Tara further, like Lama said, you can receive the teachings through the Green Tara self-paced program, where you will access 9 hours of video teachings, instruction, and demonstrations for a traditional sadhana practice. And there are many opportunities to practice Green Tara live through the Tara Mandala network, offered tirelessly by our global sanghas. You are warmly invited to join in at any time. Regular Green Tara practice sessions are hosted by the Florida Keys Sangha, Chattanooga Sangha, San Diego Sangha, Australian Sangha, and also in Polish by the Polish Sangha, and also the French Sangha. So the opportunities for this and other practice sessions are plentiful there. And I encourage you to take part as you feel moved. And on the end, on this note, today, Lama Tsultrim will be guiding practice in the San Diego Sangha, both in person and online. How amazing is that? It will be happening at 5 p.m. Pacific time. And so shortly I'll post the link in the chat. So if you would like to join, even if you don't know the practice, but just to receive the blessings of it from Lama Tsultrim, and chant them, recite the mantra alongside Lama Tsultrim, will be just so beautiful. So you are warmly invited. There is no cost to join this session. And additionally, Tara Mandala has just released a special program for this month. On September 28th, we will be hosting Longing to Awaken, Buddhist devotion in Tibetan poetry and song as part of the Christina Monson Memorial Lecture Series with Dominique Townsend from Columbia University and Holly Gailey from the University of Colorado. This donation-based event is open to all, and it will be a rich exploration of Tibetan devotional poetry featuring translations from their new anthology, Longing to Awaken. What a wonderful opportunity to immerse yourself into the beauty and depth of these sacred poems and songs. As we close, I warmly invite you to offer dana to Lama Tsultrim as a way to express our heartfelt appreciation for this time together. Dana, a term in both Pali and Sanskrit, signifies generosity. It symbolizes the deep bond between teacher and student that is established, a reflection of our interconnectedness. By giving dana, we honor the invaluable gift of Lama's teachings, which guide and sustain our practice. If you'd like to offer dana, you will find the link in the chat shortly. May the blessings of Green Tara guide and protect us all as we move forward from this gathering. May her compassionate energy continue to awaken us on our path. Thank you all once again for joining us. May we meet again and again on the path, and may all beings benefit everywhere.
Om tare tu re, Mangalam Shri Mahapani Swaha. Om tare tu re, Mangalam Shri Mahapani Swaha. Om tare tu re, Mangalam Shri Mahapani Swaha. Om tare tu